My name is Maria. I'm 27 years old and work at a company. I have a family of 4, my parents and my younger sister. However, I live in a separate house located on my paternal grandmother's property. Maybe my parents suffered from firstborn is not cute syndrome. Especially my mother. She always favored only my sister, Selena. Meals were prepared for me and necessary items were provided, but I was always ignored as if I didn't exist. The conversations were always between my parents and Selena. Even if Selena took my toys, or if we argued, for some reason, I was always made out to be the villain and got scolded. It was a daily occurrence. Conversely, even if I kept quiet to avoid getting scolded or didn't get angry when my toys were taken, that too became a reason for me to be reprimanded. In other words, no matter what I did, I would get scolded if Selena told on me to our parents. When I was young, after getting scolded for arguing with Selena, I asked my parents just once, "Why am I always the one being scolded? I'm not in the wrong." Then my mother replied, "Because you look like that noisy old lady. Just seeing your face makes me angry. You've been attached to that old woman since you were little. You're not cute." On the other hand, Selena's face and personality are so adorable. You're completely different. It's not my fault I resemble my grandmother. I thought it was because my mother frequently left me with her as a baby to go out, which made me close to my grandmother. But I was too afraid of being scolded to argue back. Whenever I couldn't bear my parents' attitude, I'd escape to my grandmother's house on the property to take a break. Of course, my grandmother understood how I felt and would embrace and accept me. "Maria, when you want to cry, you cry as much as you want. You can tell Grandma anything. I'll keep it a secret." With my grandmother's kind words, and after making her promise not to tell my parents, I would confide in her about what happened at home. My grandmother once suggested, "You can leave your home and live with me," but I declined because I was scared of truly becoming isolated from my family if I lived apart from them. Once I entered elementary school, the difference in how my parents showed affection to Selena and me became even more evident. I increasingly felt like Cinderella. I woke up early in the morning, gathered and disposed of the household trash, ran the washing machine before going to school, hung out the laundry, and then went to school. This became my daily routine. By the time I was in middle school, cleaning and preparing dinner also became my responsibilities. I had only about 2 hours of personal time each day, but because I wanted a quiet place to study, I often visited my grandmother's house. When I returned home, my family had already finished their meal, so I would clean up. After that, I'd fold the laundry, take a bath in the leftover bath water, and go to sleep. That was my daily routine. My parents opposed my attending high school. I was told to get a job without furthering my education and to help with all the household chores. However, I stood up to my parents for the first time and told them, I want to go to high school. Considering that Selena was attending a private school, it wasn't that my parents were worried about financial burdens. They just seemed to believe that I didn't need an education. With your looks and lack of talent, you have no appeal. You'll probably have to use your body to earn money, right? The only thing you have going for you is physical strength. You don't need an education. We have Selena for both beauty and academics. You just need to work hard and bring in money. But I love to study. I never got toys or games like Selena, so I used to lock myself in my grandmother's study and read books for fun. That study became my room, a peaceful space I inherited from my grandmother. Thanks to that, my grades were excellent. I had high schools and universities I wanted to attend, yet my parents said I should work right after middle school. But I wasn't about to give up on my dream of attending the school I wanted. So, I confronted my parents with my report cards that were kept at my grandmother's house. And I said, I want to go to a public high school. Wouldn't it be better for me to work hard now to attend the college and high school I want and have a higher income in the future than start working immediately? Upon hearing this, my parents were shocked by my grades and began flipping through my report cards from elementary to middle school. Selena joined in curious, but upon seeing my grades, she tore up my report cards. She even took the ones my parents were holding and ripped those as well. Selena said, "There's no way someone like you could be this smart," she said. "There's nothing to gain by faking your grades. It's sneaky to try to deceive mom and dad just to go to high school." I retorted, "I didn't fake these grades. This is my actual performance." But Selena said, "Then why hide the report cards at grandma's house? You should have shown them to mom and dad every year." "Dad, Mom, don't be fooled by her. She just doesn't want to work, so she's trying to go to high school." Hearing Selena's words, my parents seemed to snap back to reality and said, "How dare you try to deceive your parents? Just because you can't compare to Selena in looks and academics, you try to persuade us like this? We need to think about your future. Are you planning to become a fraud or a criminal? You're really a scary child. I'm disappointed. Find a job before you finish middle school. Also, as a punishment, you'll be preparing breakfast from now on." Unable to control my emotions, I grabbed the trash can containing the torn report cards and ran to my grandmother's house. Upon arriving, my grandmother seemed to have anticipated my arrival and was waiting at the entrance. As soon as I stepped inside, I told my grandmother everything that had happened. "Grandma, I might cry today." As I said that, tears started to flow. My grandmother hugged me, set me down on the living room sofa, and gently stroked my back until my tears stopped. "You don't have to hold back your tears. Crying also releases stress hormones. Cry until your heart feels lighter." I cried until I felt better. Tears of frustration, sadness, and despair flowed. After the crying stopped, as my grandmother said, I somehow felt better. "Grandma, I've decided to give up on high school for now. Work, save money, and then go to high school. Now is the time I have to give up." Saying those words made me want to cry again. My grandmother responded, "I too had given up on talking to Maria's parents. But, let's not give up, Maria," she exclaimed strongly. I looked at my grandmother in surprise. "Let's go," she said, taking my hand. We headed to the house where my parents and Selena lived. When we arrived, it was my father who greeted us. My grandmother angrily confronted my father at the entrance. "You've only ever caused Maria pain. Don't you care? Why don't you show her affection?" My father, who quickly led my grandmother and me outside, whispered, "Mom, it's not that I hate Maria. But you know, it's scary when my wife gets mad. Her shouting and raging are just too hard to handle. Besides, Maria never complained and always listened to my wife. Isn't that fine?" Hearing this, my grandmother asked, "What are you saying? You've been pressuring Maria with Fran because you're scared of her? Didn't you realize Maria has been suffering all this time?" My father remained silent, looking down. So, my grandmother started heading back to the entrance. Panicking, my father shouted, "Mom, wait. I got it. I'll make sure Maria goes to both high school and college. Please don't confront Fran directly." Then, my grandmother asked, "Can you really convince Fran? If not, everyone except Maria will have to leave this property." My father, pale-faced, swore, "I promise." My grandmother said, "If anything happens, come to my house anytime," and then slowly headed home. My father was very afraid of my grandmother. Or maybe, more precisely, he's weak against strong women who speak their minds directly. Maybe he's always kept silent about how my mother and Selena treated me, just trying to keep my mother happy and avoid her anger. I felt really pathetic about my father's actions. Even after my grandmother left, my father stood outside, lost in thought. Then, he told me, "Let's go inside," and finally, we headed to the living room where my mother and Selena were. Grandma came to the door and said, let Maria study. I told her I have no intention of letting a kid who acts smart just to deceive her parents continue her studies. But Grandma said she'd pay the tuition fees. Realizing why my father hesitated to enter the house, I struggled to hold back my laughter. My mother retorted, "Why should such a deceitful child get to continue her studies?" My father desperately replied, "If we don't let Maria study, she said we have to leave this property." After all, this house and property were inherited by Grandma, it's hers. Then, my mother exclaimed, "Leaving? That's a threat. Is she saying we should believe everything because she's letting us stay here for free?" How crafty. However, they reluctantly agreed to let me go to school. Thinking up such self-serving lies seems to be my father's specialty. It's a pathetic trait of his. But thanks to this lie, I can go to school, so I guess it's okay. However, not only my mother but also Selena seemed unsatisfied with this situation. Selena seemed anxious, knowing that I had better grades than her and might go to a better school. "Maria, which high school are you aiming for?" I plan to go to the nearest public high school." "Seriously? That's where all the top students go, right? You definitely can't make it." "That. I have to help with chores, so I can only choose the nearest school. I do think about other options sometimes, but then I won't be able to do household chores. If that's okay, then maybe I'll consider another school." Selena never interfered with my exam preparations, possibly because she knew if I couldn't attend high school, they would be evicted from this house and she intended to keep making me do house chores. However, she continued with small, childlike pranks. She would deliberately leave her belongings in my room, making it look like I stole them, and then tattle on me to our mother, or spread rumors to my friends that I was a liar and disliked by our family. It was like harassment from a grade schooler. My friends knew Selena saw me as a rival and looked down on me, so there was no issue, but I had problems with our mother. Mom would say things like, "Just because you can't beat Selena in everything doesn't mean you should bully her," or "Not only are you unattractive, but your personality is the worst too." Exactly what Selena expected her to say. Of course, I wanted to retort, "Let me tell you what I was thinking inside. Actually, it's the other way around. The one with the worst appearance and personality isn't me. It's you and Selena." To avoid such retorts, I remained silent and instead focused on my limited study time. As a result, I managed to pass the entrance exam for my top choice high school with a high deviation value. Upon receiving the news of my acceptance, I headed to my grandmother's house to express my gratitude. "Grandma, I passed. Thank you. It's truly thanks to you. If you hadn't provided me a room, I definitely wouldn't have passed. And I think I wouldn't have even been able to take the high school entrance exam if you hadn't stood up to Dad. This is the happiest day of my life. The best day." I excitedly expressed my gratitude to my grandma, and she happily responded, No, it's all because of your hard work, Maria. You really did well, congratulations. This day would surely remain a cherished memory for me." However, there was a bit of a commotion regarding this acceptance. When the neighbors found out that I got into a prestigious high school, they complimented my mother and Selena, saying things like, "Maria is amazing. Getting into that school is incredible. And she greets us every day and is so smart. You must be so proud of her." This made both mother and Selena unhappy. Moreover, the lie my father told about my grandmother paying my tuition came to light, causing chaos in our household. "Maria, you knew the neighbors thought highly of you, so you chose that school just to make fun of Selena, didn't you? You must have done something dishonest. I can't believe you're better than Selena. They say I could get into my school if I just paid. It's called an escalator school. Proud of having a sister like you. What's there to be proud of? I have nothing to boast about. Maria, "You should give up on attending that school. I can't stand this humiliation. If I don't pay the tuition, you won't be able to go, right? So, I won't pay," my father said, which brought his lie to light and further infuriated my mother and Selena. My grandmother agreed to pay my tuition, and my mother said she had to face even more humiliation because of my father's lie. Despite all this chaos, due to the watchful eyes of the neighbors, my father had to bear the cost other than the free tuition. While I continued with household chores with determination, I studied at my grandmother's house. There were times I wanted to stop doing household chores, but I persevered with grit. I feel that I resemble my grandmother not just in appearance, but also in personality. Although my grandmother is wealthy, she never provided me with financial support and never pampered me. I attended college through a scholarship program. I carefully researched and chose both my college and job intending to become a researcher at a cosmetics company. Finally, I was able to achieve my dream. I also secured a job at a major cosmetics company. After becoming a working adult, I considered living alone, but I stubbornly commuted from my parents' house. There were days I couldn't handle household chores, but in exchange, I paid a penalty in addition to the regular contributions to the household. Selena also aspired to work at a cosmetics company like me, but she failed at every attempt and eventually got a job in a different field, I heard. I don't know the name of the company, but according to Selena and my mother, she joined a more prestigious company than I did. I've become so accustomed to her long-standing rivalry towards me that I can even pretend to be shaken up by her one-upmanship. About a year after starting my job, I got my first boyfriend. He was my superior at work and was in charge of training me. In our second year of dating, we promised to get married. First, I introduced him to my grandmother, because she has a keen eye for people. Tom seems sincere. I felt that he truly cherishes Maria. I think he's a perfect match for serious-minded Maria. I fully support the marriage, of course. I confessed to both my grandmother and him that I was terrified of introducing him to my parents and Selena. The reason was, he had such refined features that seemed too good for me. He's very polished, has a clean-cut appearance, tall, and handsome. It was clear that if I brought such a high-spec guy, my mother and Selena would make a fuss. I could easily imagine them opposing our marriage and suggesting he marry Selena instead. When I told him about this, he said, "Sure, I might be tall, but I'm not particularly handsome. Besides, I want to marry Maria, not her sister. Would I be deterred by such a frivolous reason to oppose our marriage?" I explained, "It's not that. I hesitate because I think Tom will be troubled by my childish and unreasonable family. I've been used to it since I was a kid, but yet he confidently reassured me, 'You are you, and that's all that matters.' He then assertively told me he would get marriage consent from my parents. Grandmother said you don't have to endure any longer. If they oppose the marriage, just get married. Maria, you should only think about what makes you happy." Both my grandmother and he then suggested that we should visit my family home. They believed we should go before I became too fearful of the anticipated reactions and comments from my mother and Selena. I understood that it might be impolite to suddenly ask for permission to marry, but we still went to the house where our parents and Selena lived, following his suggestion. To our surprise, both our parents and Selena welcomed him and gave their blessing for our marriage. Noticing my shocked expression, my mother said, "Selena has decided to marry someone even better than Maria. He's a CEO of Selena's company. Selena is also pregnant, which makes it even more exciting. Finally, Selena has outdone Maria. We should let the neighbors know," said Selena smugly. "You wanted to compete with me by bringing a handsome man, but unfortunately, you can't surpass me, Maria. Live your mediocre life." As I had anticipated, he felt bad because of them, but we still got the approval to marry. After that, There was no interference from our parents or Selena in our wedding preparations, and everything went smoothly. I heard about the date for Selena's wedding, who would become a CEO's wife, but she said, "I'll hold a grander wedding after seeing your pitiful one. Please go ahead." Considering this, I decided on the wedding date and venue without concern for her pregnancy. One day, while I was at work, I received a call from my mother. "I used $30,000 from the safe meant for your wedding for Selena. That's the money you got from your granny, right? For your wedding." When Selena and I found the money, we felt so lucky. That's not my money, and it's not for the wedding. I know its purpose from Grandma. You should return that money to the safe. I warned, but she replied, "There's no point in trying to deceive me. You're lying. Too bad, it's already spent." I hesitated to tell her the truth because of her gleeful attitude. But I revealed why there was $30,000 in the safe. Dad embezzled money from his company. He told the company he would return it immediately, so it's not a big deal. It's a significant amount borrowed from Grandma. With no savings, Dad must have desperately asked Grandma for the loan. Is that true? Why don't you confirm with Dad? I don't know anything else than what Grandma told me. After hanging up, I sighed deeply. Just as I was about to put away my phone, it rang again. Expecting it to be my mother again. It turned out to be from my grandmother, asking me to come home as she had something important to discuss. Although Tom and I had plans to go out for dinner after work, sensing the urgency, I promptly canceled our date, and we both headed to Grandma's house. When we arrived, the usually gentle Grandma was angry. At first, I thought she was upset about the stolen money, but the reality was different. I learned that Selena's employer was introduced to her by Grandma at my father's request. This company had been in association with our family since my great-grandfather's time. The company's current president, who was married, had an affair with Selena, and the chairman, the president's father, contacted Grandma about it. Grandma, who had known the parents of the president's wife for a long time, also received a call from them. Seeing the always calm and composed Grandma in such a state of anger and confusion was rare. Apparently, realizing her condition, she reached out to me. Tom and I tried to calm Grandma down and then contacted my parents and Selena to come to Grandma's house. Once they arrived, the three of them, seeing the uncharacteristic look on Grandma's face, followed her without a word of protest. "Selena, is it true that you had an affair with the president of the company I introduced you to?" "Well, he's planning to divorce, but I guess he's technically still married now." Seeing Selena's unrepentant attitude, Grandma was trembling with rage. Thus, I took over the conversation. I explained that Grandma had a close relationship with the chairman of Selena's company, the president, and the president's wife's parents for many years. Selena's actions tarnished Grandma's reputation, which deeply angered and shocked her. Mother then intervened. "Mother-in-law, we've settled that issue by paying for mental damages. With Selena's marriage, our relationship with her company will be stronger, and it might even benefit you. Moreover, Selena is so cute. It's natural for the president to choose her over his wife." "Why are you mad at Selena?" To which my father exclaimed, "Do we even have money to pay such damages?" I heard. Mother said, "I went to the president's house and handed his wife the $30,000 that was in the safe." My father, turning pale and trembling, cried out, "No way." My mother turned to me and, with the same pale and trembling expression, asked, "Wait, the embezzlement story you mentioned this afternoon, was it true?" I said, "Why would I lie? It's true." My father said, "I'm divorcing you. My life is over." This was the first time I saw my father so angry, and both Mother and Selena were trembling in fear. Grandmother, regaining her composure, she calmly told my parents and Selena, "I'm cutting ties with all of you. Leave that house. I'll transfer the title to Maria. Leave immediately." Father was crying. He begged, "Please, lend me some money and help." Grandmother said, "I'm cutting ties with you. I'll tell the lawyer to let Maria inherit everything. I never want to see any of you again, so don't come to my funeral." She coldly watched them leave the house. Later, my grandmother left everything to the lawyer, and my parents and Selena were evicted from the house on her property. Father was arrested for embezzlement. After the divorce, my mother returned to her parents' home, lived with her brother and his family, and seemed to be leading a constrained life. The president and his wife didn't get divorced and wanted to mend their relationship, so Selena ended up living alone in a small apartment. She appears to be continuing her part-time job at the convenience store, even with her growing belly. I'm planning to live in the house I inherited from my grandmother after getting married. It feels like the happy ending Cinderella had, and I'm cherishing this happiness now.